Thank you so much for coming to the Sashiko Live Streaming. This is Atsushi, and this is Thursday night, and this is the night we stitch together while talking about Sashiko. Ooh. Sorry to be late, a little bit late. I hope that I fixed the audio again. Let me check that. Just a second, okay? Probably not. Can you hear me? Oh my gosh. Just a second, okay? Come on. Hello. Just let me check the audio, okay? Can everybody hear me? Is it only me who cannot hear that? Let me know. Sounds so good. Okay, so it's only me. It's only me who does not get the audio. Why not? Why me? Anyway, if you hear good, that's perfectly fine. I'm having a little bit of a problem with the audios too, so if you cannot hear you, let me know. Well, if you cannot hear me, you cannot let me know, but if it stops, that means that I lost the camera. Just one announcement. We will have the gathering together after this live streaming. I will do this live streaming until, let's say, 10:15 or so. And after that, we will move to the Zoom where we can stitch together as well. And I don't know how much I will participate, but you're welcome to join that after this live streaming. If this is the first time, I have a link to get a ticket, which is the givebarter.com Sashiko Gathering. If you have already registered to the Pram Studio, where I have this link, I have the image here. You can find the link somewhere. My point is, if you have registered with the Pram Studio, you will, or you should have received the email from them. So that's one thing. If you want to get a link right after this live streaming, please check the givebarter.com for the ticket. Besides that, did I bring any topic to talk about today? Let me see. Is Sashiko Meditation? Really? I brought that topic? Well, we will talk about Sashiko's meditation. The answer is yes for that. But I would like to mention, Sashiko is getting very popular as the meditation technique. And it is not wrong at all, but I would like to talk more about that too. Okay, let's start then. I will change the camera. Just a second. I hope there's no weird stuff coming in. Just a second. So much trash. Wait. Okay. On now. Not now. There we go. Perfect. Let's go. I got a little, how do you call that? Kind of bronchitis? Not a bronchitis. I don't have a bronchitis. I might not. I have a little breathing issue today. It's probably because of the dust or air. So I don't think you would hear wheezing, but if you hear that, I'm sorry about that. The mic is very sensitive. Microphone is very sensitive, so I hope it doesn't pick up those noise, but just bear with me for that. I have been feeling a little... I was okay last week. Then I got sick a little bit again. Come and goes. I don't think it's COVID, but... it's not the best time for those things. Let me do this Asanoha pattern. Oh, today. I will erase this one. Little bit of project that I'm working on, so this is for the project. Where should I go first? Hot fresh ginger tea is good for everything. Yeah, tea is good. I should really drink tea, which I should have brought it today. I was running around and completely forgot about it. But yeah, tea. I have a. I think I'm really. How can I say? I depend on medicine a lot, so I have an inhaler just in case if I cannot really breathe. I don't think it's gonna get that bad, but what was I gonna say? Yeah, the winter is coming. Winter is coming. Winter is good for Sashiko, but at the same time, it's not my favorite season. It's kind of cold here. In the Pennsylvania, it gets quite cold, and I have things to do toward the January. I think everybody gets busy, regardless of the culture, toward the end of the year, December. But Japanese has the word shiwasu. Shiwasu is the Japanese word for the December, which literally means that even teacher or master, or not a master, teacher who teach things would run. So that's the kanji character for that word. Shiwasu is the teacher running. I think that's because we called the word because it's that busy. And I don't like being busy, but things happens. Anyway. Sashiko meditation. I don't know why I brought this topic. I will think about it. I did not prepare today's topic at all. So if you have any topic for me to talk about, I'm happy to answer those things. If not, let's stitch them. I'll mumble stories. Lily-san, arigato. Thank you, Lily-san. Does this mean like teacher runs, right? There might be some side story, or not even side story, like main story might be different, but as long as I know, it's quite superficial understanding, but as long as I can imagine, that is the word teacher running, which means that's gonna be, well, there are a lot of stories like that. For example, December 8th is the day we sort of wrap it up things, kotoyoka. And that's the day we do the harikuyo, which is the farewell ceremony for the needle, either December 8th or September 8th. I have been introducing that traditions last 4 years, so you should be able to find those articles on my website or Instagram. Just go back to either February 8th or December 8th post. I should have the details for that. But toward the end, we believed that the spirit comes back to the house, each houses, and we as human who lives today in this world were supposed to prepare for that. And the Japanese eat some food, we call it osechi, in the first few days of New Year, like first 3 days. The reason they have those specific food is that because it was not okay to cook during those times. It was not recommended to cook those times, and as the result, they made those specific food for them to not to be able to avoid not to be able to avoid to to avoid the cooking, like using the water or fires. Question: are these different thickness of Sashiko thread? Nope. I mean, yes, they are, but for the Sashiko thread we use, there's only one thickness. The Sashiko thread we use has only one thickness. Everything else, like, you can find the other companies selling Sashiko thread with their histories or with their stories or nothing. They might just name it Sashiko so that they can sell it. Of course, there are different thickness from different manufacturer or different places, but for us, for our Sashiko thread, we have only one. And we have been happy with that thickness for last 50 years or so. So we don't change the thickness based on the project. Mostly. I don't say 100%, but there are few thread that's good as the thin thread, which I sometimes, not recently, but when I do very, very small hitomezashi, I may use the Yokota's thin thread. But that's a very rare case. And when we use that thin thread, what some of the technique I teach, or some of the technique I do not right now, will not work. So we have to be kind of careful for that. But in most of the cases, we use only one type of thread, which is this one. And that makes a lot of difference. So I keep saying that, but thread matters. I don't know how many times I said thread matters, but that's the message. It's not that difficult. I wondered, as there are different thickness in other type of thread like pearl cotton. It's not the thickness about this thread. It's the twist. If you remember the live session with me, I probably explained that when I explained the kasane. It's really not the thickness that we try to get this thread. Of course, the thickness is important, but it is more like a twist. We double it when we need to have a thick when we need a thick stitches, we double it sometimes. But we very rarely split the thread because it ruins the purpose of doing Sashiko stitching. So we really do not prefer thinner thread than this one. Sometimes when you want to make it thicker, you can double it. But it's not about, well, when we focus on the result only, like result, let's say if you want to make like a flower, like embroidery, then probably choosing the different thickness of the thread might be important. But that's not the case in Sashiko. At least the Sashiko we practice, that's not the primary goal. As the result, we did not need to have different thickness, and it's much better for the fabric, for the purpose of Sashiko, to have the exactly same thread thickness throughout, either double or single. It's good to have the very even stitches. Ne. So let's talk about meditation. How many people think that Sashiko can be a good meditation? I think many people can relate to that topic. And I don't know why it is meditative, but it is meditative, and it's very good meditation for that matter. It's very good. I mean, among many meditation technique, Sashiko can be quite productive, quite efficient, quite easy technique to meditate. You don't really need to even have a technique. So meditation is kind of like a technique, right? Meditation requires some technique. For example, Vipassana meditation, which I follow, you kind of have to practice that. We have to learn that first. They call it new student, old student, but you have to go there and learn that. 10 days. As a new student, you got to go through the 10 days meditation kind of retreat, practice, and then you learn how to do it. So meditation is like more like a process or technique to go into like some certain phase, status. So Sashiko can be very much meditation for that, because it does not require those focus on, like, we don't have to focus on doing meditation, yet we can do the meditation kind of thing. So that's pretty much because of the rhythm of the running stitch or hand movement, that we don't really have to think. We can be here, like as is. So it's pretty much focusing and also emptying your mind. And that's why very good meditation, more like technique for that matter. But at the same time, it is our view, not you, not anybody, we as human beings who lives in 2022. It's one view of Sashiko, and it is true. It is very true that Sashiko is meditation, but that's not the whole story, because we can choose to do Sashiko, and that can be meditation, but how about those who did not have a choice to do it? For those people who had to stitch, we defining Sashiko as the meditation or Zen or other like a positive image can be quite, I don't want to say disrespecting, but it is suppressing our value, suppressing their values based on our values. It's not a Western or Eastern, it's just simply our current value, modern value versus the old one. So it is meditative, at the same time we would like to kind of thank our life that we can choose to meditate while stitching. And that's the choice we can make. And there are people who did not have that kind of choice. But those people who did not have a choice are the people who made Sashiko, who developed Sashiko. So knowing those stories makes it very difficult and very different. Like just saying like Sashiko is meditation, so let's enjoy it. That there's nothing wrong with that. But by somebody saying that for the purpose of making like profit or benefit out of it, then the culture will be completely different. And that's something I'd like to avoid. And if you follow me for like 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, or even if you take the online class, I used to say that Sashiko was done in the poverty, poor. Sashiko was stitching for the poor people. Sashiko was the stitching developed in the poverty. You may realize that, but I stopped saying that. I don't say that anymore. I don't use the word poor or poverty And if somebody uses that, I try to correct it. If, like, the interviews or podcast, in those cases, like if they ask me if Sashiko is they understand Sashiko as the stitching in the poverty if they read some books or read my even stories. I try to correct that because it's not really, it's true, but it's based on our value. We don't know if they felt they were poor or not. They were probably financially more challenging than us based on our value, but we don't know that. We shouldn't define if that was poor or even not wealthy. We don't know that. So I started saying that, well, it's not me. Yoshiko Wada sensei, she's the kind of legendary person in Shibori. She's the one who corrected me for that. And when we talked about that, she helped me to realize that Sashiko is the stitching developed in the harsh or difficult condition with limited resources. It's a little longer to explain that, but it's more accurate. And I prefer that right now, so I stopped using the poor. So that kind of go back to the definition of Sashiko as meditation. It is very, very true, and there's no way to deny that Sashiko is the meditation. However, we have to understand it's our value, not them. Maybe. There might be people who were thinking Sashiko as meditation back then, but Sashiko can be meditation because we can choose to do it. But we have to know that there were people who did not have any choice to do it. And we often think that our value is the answer. When we talk about culture or historical thing, we have to kind of be neutral. And I think I don't like what I don't like about I don't like about it, but the reason I keep saying that Sashiko introduced in English is not wrong but insufficient is because that they're trying to push their values into somebody else's value. And that's what I'm most afraid of, because sometimes Western value is much, much stronger than the others. And again, people who are listening to this are not the people I have to communicate, but those who decided not to listen to my stories, they are intentionally pressing their value to the existing culture. They don't care how it was. They care what they can get. Like, they have their own profit. They have their own, more frankly speaking, they have their own money floating in front of them. And by them saying that it's not Sashiko, they might lose that pot or pile of money, floating money. So they will never say that it's not. They will never accept it because unless they change it completely. But if there are any case of cultural appropriation, I think that is the cultural appropriation. It's not like somebody using the word of Sashiko for their stitching. That itself can be cultural appropriation, but itself is not. But when they do it intentionally without thinking about the story, like for example, let's say that they start saying that Sashiko is the meditation, period, without any further studying or learning about what Sashiko could be, and then they are kind of simplifying Sashiko as the meditation, right? So by defining Sashiko as meditation, we can very much simplify this Sashiko stitching as the technique to meditate. That itself is not wrong, but by focusing on that, this becomes the package. When one culture becomes the package, the reason they make a package is to sell, to offer, to make it to something more money related. And that's probably the case. And the definition of the cultural appropriation can be very different, but I learned that it's cultural appropriation can happen when the opportunity is one part of that. So if I, as the minority who introduced Sashiko in English, lose the opportunity to introduce the whole picture of my own culture, that's the example of cultural appropriation, not the money or not the usage. It's just being fair is actually the key in my understanding. So, well, I think Japan is a little bit following the cultural appropriation after the Japan catch up the US few years later. And right now the cultural appropriation is becoming kind of hot topic in Japan, or I may be picking up those topics because I'm trying to learn more, but we as a Japanese do a lot. We do. As much as I complain about, as much as I share my caution about it, we do a lot. Many people try to accuse me, like, oh, Japanese people also do the cultural appropriation, so you shouldn't be complaining that. Well, we do, but at the same time, it's a different thing. So, Japanese doing that does not make them to do the same thing. But we do, so there's going to be a big discussion about that probably in the future. But it is very difficult concept, very, very sensitive topics to talk about. Yet I would like to make sure that I can follow that. I mean, I would like to make sure that people can do the Sashiko as they did. I would like to make sure that people can make the Sashiko they made in the past. And I don't think just following today's Sashiko teacher itself will not preserve the Sashiko we've been practicing, because I don't see them coming. The result is very obvious. It explains a lot. So just keep learning. Yes, it's from Candida. Yes, I focus on the fabric, the thread, the movement of the needle and the pattern that emerge, not the period. But for me, it is not all about meditation. It is just the side effect. There we go. Thank you so much, Canada. So the meditation is more like a byproduct of doing Sashiko. Thank you. It shouldn't be, shouldn't be a little strong word. It is not a bad thing. Like, be careful with the packaging. If somebody started selling or something, if somebody non-Japanese, mainly non-Japanese, started kind of simplifying it and started selling that as the one package, like Sashiko as the meditation technique as the book, well, that's a pretty big red flag, because they are focusing on the meditation. And as long as we know that it's a byproduct, then it's not wrong at all. Thank you. It's the side effect. Yes. It's the side effect, which is great, which is very good to have, especially in today's world where we have to be very, very fast, efficient, productive. I mean, this is not a productive work at all, right? We're doing the old handwork. If you want to just stitch it, you should use the sewing machine, or, computerized sewing machine can do a better job to make patterns, if that's the only goal for the stitching, making the patterns. But that's not our goal. That's not the reason we stitch. And thinking about those things is the key. Like, why do we stitch? Why do you stitch? Why do we call it Sashiko? Why? And most likely there are stories if that's the cultural context. In other words, if they don't know the story, that's probably the lack of studying or learning. If they say like, well, I don't know, just because is the scary word. If they say just because, that means that shows that they don't know anything about that. So be careful with those people who keep saying like just because. And it's a good question to ask, like, why do you do that? And usually, like most likely, in most cases, they have stories. And if they don't have stories, if that's the just in case can happen in the cultural context as well. In that case, they have a story so that they say that it's just because. There's a story behind the just because too. There's no such a thing as just because in case of just because. Huh? In case just because has the example stories behind it. Oh my, what am I speaking? What am I talking about? I hope it makes sense. But that's what cultural context is all about. And we are losing it. Very sad. And the more I learn about those things, or the more I talk on live streaming, or I research, I make presentations, speech, podcast interviews, I try to, well, I do not. I was going to say I try to be more active on the media. I'm sorry. I that's a lie. I don't. I'm not a big fan of media, especially if they don't know me at all. But last few months, I received a quite many. Well, probably 4 or 5. Not more than 5. Requests to write or requests to talk about from the student who took my workshop. And of course, if they took my workshop, there's nothing that I say no. There's no case that I would say no for those things. I'll be happy to be there. So, as much as I want them to avoid the same questions, and I know that they know it already, their listeners, their viewers do not know me, so I happen to share the same stories over and over again. Sharing the same story is kind of tiring. At the same time, it's somewhat practical to realize what it is. And in those reviews, I sometimes understand people say like, you gotta be more angry. They like last 2 years, I sometimes, not often, but I sometimes get a like direct message or comments. He or she is kind of angry that I'm not angry. Like, oh, you should be more fighting back. You should protect yourself more. And since I'm Japanese, like I'm the very privileged person in Japan, right? I have pretty much it. I was born with everything. The male, firstborn child, the Japanese citizen with the Japanese parents. So privilege-wise, I was having everything. So more like I was easygoing. And I couldn't find the reason to be upset that much. But the more I research about it, the more I realized that it is actually very unfair. It's not about someone making money by using the specific word, or somebody writing a book about it to make money, or it's not that specific thing. But it is true that by them doing that, like teaching or publishing or those things related to money, it is true that opportunities are lost to those who do not speak English. Opportunities, that's probably what I can focus on, not the profit. When I focus on profit, I kind of feel weird because everybody has the freedom to do those things. But opportunity is very, like, for example, if everybody decided to be the Sashiko artist and if they start selling items, I don't think that's the case of them taking my opportunities. Because they can be a good Sashiko artist and I can probably get inspired from them. Of course, I want them to learn more, but those people will probably learn more anyway, so if they don't learn, they will not continue doing that. So those are not I don't think that's the case of cultural appropriation me should be angry about. But the opportunity, like for example, Sashiko, defining Sashiko as the meditation period, as the package, is eliminating the possibility of some Japanese to teach Sashiko as something else. It's an extreme case scenario, and I think that's not fair. I think. Well, I mean, being able to speak English is one thing, so I hope it makes sense. So it is true that Sashiko is meditation, but there's still more than that, and it is important to explain what more is. Okay, sorry, I kind of skipped the comments. I will read that. Jenny, I can agree that meditation is the byproduct I experience in relaxation with the other slow stitching technique that I used to relax. Yep, so it's not only Sashiko, it can be anything. It can be just cutting the vegetable or, it's like a playing in the sand. You do things and you feel like that. And something that seems strange to me is that when I look at examples of patches applied to a pair of jeans, either the edges are left raw and not turned under to apply patch that is already fraying. Well, it can be both. I do not fix it. My preference-wise, I think you're talking about the patches, but when I patch, I don't trim the edge. I let it fray the fabric. Usually. Most like 80%. I don't know if the most likely is 80%, but yeah, I don't really trim the edge. And there are, of course, reasons why I don't, but I don't really trim the edge. Let me read again. Something that seems strange to me is that when I look at examples of patches applied to a pair of jeans, often the edges are left raw and not turned under. So turned under means like cleaned, I think. The fabric kind of, instead of like leaving like this flayed, you probably mean like this, right? So you have a clean edge. That's probably what Julie mentioned that. If they have a reason why not, I think it's okay. I mean, you gotta ask them like why. I can probably assure that some people say just because they don't think about it. Like, why do you not clean the edges? Then they say like just because. Hey. Like, can they stop using the word just because? I really don't like that word, just because. When I had a lot of discussion on the Facebook, which made me like this, actually. Without that nasty group, I wouldn't be like me right now. So I went through something very nasty, painful, and sad for that matter, because I was a minority there. Like, I was, until some others started speaking up for me, I did not even know how to protect myself back then. So anyway, so there's this. So in those cases, people often say that just because. There are many people who kept saying just because, and there's no such a thing as just because when you know the stories and culture. Stories. Oh, that's really nice to say, Jenny. Thank you. Participating in this live streaming has given me a respect for Sashiko that I would not have had otherwise. Yep. That's very, it's my goal here, and I really appreciate that. But I think that's what's happening to many cultures. Many types of cultures. Not only Sashiko, but I don't think Sashiko is lucky to have me. Somebody gave me that big compliment. But it is true that it's lucky that I could speak up the language that tend to be most powerful. So, I could be just stitching right now as the Sashiko, let's say, master who does not come to the media, just stitching in Japan without speaking English. And you can, of course, come to the store probably, or my house and look at it in Japan, but I wouldn't be able to share this much stories if I didn't have ability to speak up. And I did not speak English at all until the year of 19 years old. I didn't. Literally, I didn't. I could get some number. I was better in grammar back then, probably. Not right now. I was good with the multiple choice questions, stuff like that. But the speaking-wise, listening, communication-wise, my English was not that good is the humble way to say that. It was horrible. But if we cannot, that's the issue. In most cases, probably people here are very understanding. So no matter what kind of English I speak, you are willing to listen. You're willing to sort of learn. Unfortunately, some people really don't listen to the others, especially if they don't speak English in this world. So, accent is not a good idea. I can speak like Japanese, probably. I still can. Or I can add other. Well, I don't know if I can, but I can probably speak like Japanese more. But getting rid of the accent was one important task when I decided to teach. Me having the Japanese accent might make it more authentic, might sound more authentic, but that could block somebody's willingness to learn. By the way, what kind of accent do I have? There are some accent, and it is not the Native American English, right? It's not Native American. I'm sorry, it's not American English that you speak, and it's not state. Each state has a different accent, in my understanding, but I don't think my accent is either of those. It is something different, but not Japanese, and I tried to figure out where it comes from. And my wife always said it's a mix of everything. But she thinks that it's not Japanese accent. And I would like to know. I would like to kind of if there's anything closer to that. I mean, you are the expert here who speaks English as the mother language. So if you find my accent, let me know. Teach me that. I would like to know. Helen, I just zigzagged the edge of the pattern I'm about to attach. I debated with myself whether to do it or not, thinking that she would not. I didn't want the edge to fray for this project. Okay on jeans, but say on a formal kimono, what would people do in the past besides try to adjust? Well, people who wear the kimono does not do sashiko, period. I mean, kimono and patches are not gonna happen. If you find some Western selling kimono with patches, that's not kimono. There are different names for that. And the people in the class, like the social class where they could afford the kimono, they wouldn't be stitching. Therefore, there's no such a thing as formal sashiko. There's no jacket for the formal setting of sashiko, in my understanding. It does not make sense. It's like what is like? It's just not. It does not match. It does not. And no, it doesn't. That's a choice. That's already a choice. To the example would be, do you dress up when you wash the dishes? Like, do we? Like, we don't dress up we don't have a business suit to wash the dishes, right? Like, do we have to be formal? No. You can be wearing some pajamas or sweater or even naked, which I don't recommend, but you can wash dishes. So that's why there's no professional sashiko person. Like we have to define what the professional is, but it's very rare to find somebody who were making a living as the sashiko artisan. I know only few, and well, my family is one of those, but I know very, very, very few. On the other hand, there are numbers of kimono tailor, which is called wasaishi. So it's a little different category. You have some accent, but it's not a bad thing. Most people that I know from another country retain some of the accent. Yes, I do have accent, but I just don't know which accent it is. It's not Japanese. You'll see a lot of Japanese accent next year, but I don't think mine is Japanese. A woman would not sew clothing for her children. You are mixing a lot of. I think you read a lot, right? Like Julie, I'm talking about Julie's comment. There are a lot of piece of information, like there as a dot, and you're trying to connect it somehow with your imagination. Unfortunately, those informations are not well explained. It's not your problem. It's the author's problem. Those pieces are not well explained. As the result, what you understand already is based on the Western's value, which is not, again, it's not your problem. That's how difficult it is for me to even share the story. But if you kind of follow everything from the scratch, from the beginning of my Instagram, YouTube, you may find the time to kind of connect those dots. And probably what Helen is saying pretty accurate. So she said that she was wondering about it. She debated, and she thought that I wouldn't do it. And probably she cannot explain that, but she's been reading my stuff a lot. As the result, she's a little bit connecting the dot. And the story comes later. The sense comes first. And the Japanese women who makes the something to wear are not the exact category we are talking about. I had a grandmother who was a well-respected seamstress. Yes, so that's it. She was the seamstress, and Sashiko person is not a seamstress. It's a completely different, like if it's a job title, it's a completely different thing. It's not a job title, but if we have to define that as a job, it's a different job description, different job title, different, like little, completely different thing. So that's like a big understanding Sashiko person as the tailor or somebody to sew. Like that's not the same thing. So Sashiko's mending is not wrong. Mending is a very important part of Sashiko. But what I keep saying that is mending is not the main part of Sashiko because that's not what they did. That's why cleaning the edge is not my first choice. Well, there's a little more story than that. Cleaning the edge is defining the answers for the fabric from us. We decided. Sashiko doesn't go well with that. So those artisans or seamstress or those professional sewing person has the end product, right? If they sew kimono as the wasai professional, there is a customer or there's somebody who will wear that, and that's kind of one end of their job, right? Does it make sense? So if they take the order, if the mother decided to stitch, the project start from there, and there will be the ending at some point. If they complete stitching, that's the end. Sashiko doesn't have the ending. Well, I mean, of course, there's gonna be the end of stitching, but that's not the end. That's why it's kind of difficult to stitch for others. At least it was difficult to stitch for others. That's why it was not so popular to have some Sashiko artisans. I don't think there were many Sashiko artisans available for them stitching, for their mending or stitching. It was very, 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 very ordinary as the result. And as a result, it's not really the professional thing. And making kimono is, of course, more ordinary things to do. However, that's more like a choice. I'm talking about general things. So it's, of course, there's going to be exceptions as well. But that being said, I think. What do I think? What did I say? I think that. What was the question that I was thinking? Well, I think that's the reason the Sashiko has not been so well introduced. And not every Japanese people know about Sashiko. I mean, majority Japanese don't know what Sashiko is. Because they decided to not to take it. They decided to discontinue that. And I completely understand it. I completely understand why they decided to discontinue. It's very natural things. I try to discontinue it too as well. But yeah, so for the mending, I would not trim. Like again, there's nothing wrong with trimming, but I would not trim it because of those two reasons. It's probably a good long story, so I probably should write that. I will take a note. 布の端を切る。It's just Sashiko is not so respected, if that's the way to explain that. I probably explained this before, but there are three major stitchery in Japan. Was. And of course there are more around it, but if I were to categorize the Japanese stitchery into three categories, I think I can do that. If you have a problem, please let me know because I would like to learn more. But there are three categories. One is Japanese embroidery, which is the art. There is the art for the Japanese embroidery. So defining Sashiko as the Japanese embroidery is a little too soon, too quick, too packaged, too... I sometimes say Japanese embroidery. I used to say that, but it's not quite accurate because there is already the culture or traditions, so-called Japanese embroidery, Nihon Shishu. It's just literally Japanese embroidery, the word-wise. And the second category is wasai, which is the craftsmanship guild, artisans guild for the those professionals who make kimono. And there's a school for that. There's a like organization to protect that culture. Sashiko is more how can I say, more ordinary things. There's no organization to protect, like there's no government organization to protect Sashiko. I tried to make one, but they said it's just not gonna happen because it's too ordinary. Like we cannot make the organization to protect how to wash the dishes. Same way. So when we mix those threes in one pod, things are still kind of deteriorating. I mean, it will become more difficult to understand what it is. And those are not only those three categories. A lot of definition introduced in English is not wrong. Not wrong. That's the problem. That's the problem. They are not wrong by itself, but it does not make sense when you connect it. When we connect it. And when we connect it, if we can have a reason or stories, then that's gonna be okay. But because they can't, or because they don't have those connections, they stood saying just because. So just because is quite scary word. So I really gotta write a book. I don't know how and when. But trend-wise, I have to write how-to book, which I don't want to. So I probably should go back to the master's level, right? Like master's in, I don't know, I probably should go back to academic, like Wada sensei is back. I'm not smart like her, and I'm not energetic like her. She got into PhD with Fulbright. I think it's okay to share that, but at the age of her age, that's insane. In a good way, but that's very, very scary. No, I'm sorry, not scary. Very impressive. Was there a particular place that Sashiko began, or did it just use the different part of Japan independently? Everywhere. Every single where they'd have to stitch. Millions, probably. Well, not millions, but millions. Figure of speech. It's like, asking a question, was there like a few hundred years from now in the future, our great grandson or might ask us, hey grandpa, was there a particular city that did not require the car? Like gasoline car? Like actual, not electric car? 300 years from now, they might ask, like everything becomes like electric, or they might ban those gasoline cars. And the boy might ask their grandparents or great grandparents, was there a particular city or place that Sashiko was famous, or Sashiko began, or not Sashiko, the car began, or the people start driving a car. Probably yes, but it's not that significant. Well, it's probably significant to understand where the beginning city, probably it's Detroit, right? So for that, it's not really a good analogy. But in New York, you don't have to probably drive. In my city, if you don't have a car, it's kind of the end of the story. That's how ordinary it is. And we do have a specific place that was told as the beginning of Sashiko. Told. However, it's kind of risky to define that as the beginning because there might be others. So I'm not really defining that. I mean, it is very ordinary that they decided not to leave documents behind. There's no documents and there's no voice left behind. It is difficult to define what is the answer, right? It's like, okay, it's like same as washing the dishes. Do we write down about how to wash the dishes? But there's tons of things about washing the dishes. You do not want to layer those oily dishes and dish from the flute. But we don't really leave it documented. It is kind of difficult to ask, like, who started washing the dishes? Probably somewhere. And that's how ordinary it is. That's why I did not know what to teach when they asked me to teach. Like, what do I teach? Don't you stitch every day? Like, okay, you don't then. So yeah, it's greatly romanticized. Greatly romanticized, and I get benefit out of it probably. At the same time, I get so scared. It is becoming something else. And again, it's not the listener here. You did not do anything wrong. You did not do anything bad. It's just the responsibility of those who offer the information. And I'm scared of writing the book. I said it. I'm worried about writing a book because if I define things, I might filter somebody's information, and I don't know if I can take that responsibility. I don't mind being responsible, but I don't want to be disrespectful. The more you know about Sashiko, the less you can write a book about it, to be honest. There are tons of people who I want to write a book. I want them to write a book. I keep asking them to write a book, please. Like 40 years ago, I was not even my mother's belly. Kind of. I was probably a little bit. Like I was probably this size 40 years ago. But 40 years ago, there were some Sashiko people was stitching. Like my friends were there stitching, and I think she should write a book, but she does not agree. She's like, no, not me. Like, well, if not you, who then? So, what I'm talking about right now, I don't remember. I don't know what I'm talking about. But we still have a lot to cover. And it's not a bad thing at all. I think it's a good thing. because that's what we still have time. We still have time for that. But yeah, it just well, I said it already. Well, then I let it go. It's scary. It's scary to write a book. It's very scary. I have to really define, I have to explain that this is the story of my Sashiko, and only then I can write as my own understanding of Sashiko. But unfortunately, that's not what many people want. They need the answer for everything, like step by step. If that's what they want, I don't take that responsibility because it can be very toxic to this culture itself. I don't want to be the answer. That's not what I want. I can offer one answer from my perspective. That's not the answer, though. While everybody else is defining the answer, well, that's why it's difficult to talk about. But well. All right, so I will stop from here. Sorry, I was mumbling. So about 10 minutes, 5 minutes to go to the live session. Not a live session. Come on, I'm sorry. I'm just getting tired. Okay, let me rephrase that. We will move to the Sashiko Gathering, which is going to happen to the 20 minutes from now. Oh, sorry. I will stop the live stream here. Just a second. Thank you so much for coming again, and I really appreciate the comments, and I really appreciate your presence here. If you could put the good button, that would be very much helpful for me to keep this channel healthy. I don't want to have the bad ratio of the good and bad buttons. Yeah, unfortunately there are some people. Well, I'm doing something. I'm speaking out my honesty, so there are people who don't like that. Anyway, that's one thing. And if you would like to join that Sashiko Gathering, I will send you the link to the person who are on the list of that ticket, Sashiko Gathering. So that'd be great to. I will send it like 5 minutes before. Let's make like this. I will send the email 5 minutes before the 10:30, like 10:25. So if you happen to resist that after that, I'm sorry for this time. I don't want to go back to the. I don't want to. Well, I might send it. Well, anyway, sign up before 10:30 and then sign up before 10:25, and I will send you the link. Come on. Okay. Okay, so it's a little early, but thank you so much for coming to the live streaming. Next week, Thursday. What do we do next week? That's a good question. I would like to ask the question. Are you going to be here on the Thursday night? I might. So I will come probably. And I might do the live streaming, although that's the Thanksgiving night. But if nobody's here, I don't want to do that. If nobody's here, I might not. Well, maybe. It's like being a foreigner in the US. Well, my wife became citizen, but we don't have family, right? We don't have family in the US, so my wife works at the healthcare industries. So somebody has to be on call at some point, even over the holiday, and she takes that on call over the holidays a lot because her coworkers or her employees has to, they want to go back to their home country, hometown, or home. They want to spend time with the family. And unfortunately, we don't have that family here. So she tend to take, last 5-6 years she's been taking that for this week, and we cannot go anywhere when we, well, my daughter and I can go somewhere. We went to Boston once with our friends without my wife, and that's kind of sad. So we don't really do that anymore. So we just probably eat. I might be completely sleepy, stuffed. We will try to follow that Thanksgiving. Well, probably yes. Well, I don't know. But yeah, I'll be here. And let's have the same time, same place, same topic. Not the same topic, same Sashiko, different topic. Oh, you don't. Some people, yeah, not everybody's here is American. Good point. All right, thank you so much for coming. I'll see you in 15 minutes in Zoom if that's what you're gonna be there.